far up, far out, far more. Doctor Who is back, and in the 60s this time. This was the second of 2 episodes to be released last weekend, and there is a lot to talk about, so let's not waste a moment more doing this silly little intro, and crack on with my review of The Devil's Chord, which is written by Russell T Davies and directed by Ben Chessel. We start with a cold open this time. Unlike Space Babies, we have Timothy Drake playing the Devil's Chord.
He said it! He said it!
And Maestro is released, appearing like a horror film monster, climbing out of the piano and taunting Timothy with strangely comforting and almost seductive words before violently killing him with music, breaking the fourth wall, and playing the Doctor Who theme. What an opening! We'll talk about Jinx Monsoon's performance shortly, but this opening scene completely sold me, where I wasn't completely gripped or sold by the Space Babies. Check out my review of that separately, by the way, that is on the channel. I was immediately sold by the vibe, performances, music in this scene. Everything just gripped me immediately. After the titles, we cut to the Doctor and Ruby on the Tardis. We see the theme tune play out of the jukebox, which is a nice little touch. Ruby wants to see the Beatles record their first album, and off they go to the 60s with snazzy new outfits and great licensed music to match. It is a shame this episode couldn't get any Beatles or Cilla Black music, but hearing licensed music in Doctor Who is great, and something we've not had a ridiculous amount of since Series 11, probably? Bar, of course, Rasputin, Wild Blue Yonder, Spice Up Your Life, and Merry Christmas Everyone. The song Merry Christmas Everyone, I wasn't just wishing you a Merry Christmas, but incidentally, Merry Christmas anyway. They then meet the Beatles, and they're awful, not in an unintentional kind of way, but as part of the story. Although this song about a dog named Fred seems to be doing really well on TikTok at the minute, so who knows, maybe that is the tune we all need right now. It's not just the Beatles though, Cilla Black is also quite shit apparently, so yeah, that's a shame. We then sit down with Paul McCartney and John Lennon at the cafe, bump into another Susan twist, and then we have this gorgeous back and forth with Paul and the Doctor, and then John with Ruby talking about music and their lives without it. A gorgeous, gorgeous scene, beautifully performed, beautifully written. And then, I love this scene. I just adore this scene. Maestro appears in reflections, almost taunting and threatening everyone subconsciously. This scene to me was kind of reminiscent of Pennywise from It, but the sort of 90s Tim Curry It, not the modern one. More sort of distorted and vaguely threatening with immense sense of power. Scary, but a little bit flamboyant and really beautifully done. We're then on the roof with the piano, but before we get into that, some dialogue about the Doctor living in the 60s with Susan Foreman at the junkyard at Totter's Lane. Interesting, to say the least, especially since this Who is for a new generation, seemingly. It feels weird to reboot the show with a season 1 and then straight away mention Susan Foreman in episode 2, unless of course there is a reason behind it. I do wonder if we'll see Susan return at some point. Carol Ann Ford is still knocking about, and there's so much that could be done with the Doctor and granddaughter dynamic nowadays. Plus, it does give us a break from the dynamic that we normally have in the TARDIS, just a modern-day Earth companion. Not a clue what this would or could look like, but since we have a casting of a new companion next season, whose character name is still being kept a secret, I do wonder. Anyway, we get this gorgeous scene of Ruby playing her own theme on the piano, which was wonderful and a really beautiful segment in the episode. Another classic from Murray Gold, spot on. This is followed with another horror-inspired appearance from Maestro, with their hands climbing first out of the piano, gorgeously shot, and the giggle immediately got me excited. Seeing the Doctor run off immediately terrified was great. I do, though, want to see an episode where this Doctor immediately stands up to the enemy or monster. I understand there's only been 2 episodes, but he did run away from the Bogeyman and Maestro. They both had clear reasoning behind it. The Bogeyman was intentionally scary with an exact decibel scary voice or whatever, and Maestro, yeah, an offspring of the Toymaker, it makes sense. But I am excited to see when this version of the Doctor does stand up to a character pretty much straight away, similar to how he did with Maestro later on in the episode. I'm kind of thinking like the swimming pool scene from School Reunion. That was immense, and that was only a couple episodes into Tennant's run, but it was gorgeous. He basically just threatened the enemy to go away, or he basically will kill them. Anyway, the bit with the sonic screwdriver silencing everything was completely brilliant. I was shocked at first, but similar to the slow motion scene in the cafe, it is very refreshing to see the show play with form like that. There's a lot that strays away from conventions in this episode, and it makes it super unique and memorable because of it. The way the sound is reintroduced is fab as well, with the tuning fork and the water sort of slowly simmering back in. Brilliant. A small nitpick though. As an extension of a point I made in my last review, there's a bit of dialogue where the Doctor says when he first met Ruby, he told Ruby about the Toymaker, which never happened in the Church on Ruby Road. And the funny thing is it was in the script, but never made it into the final episode, which is fine. I can kind of headcanon this line to work, but it does concern me that we're writing episodes here that are coming out with moments referencing things that were supposed to be on screen but didn't end up on screen. It feels odd, but that's okay. I can let it slide. I'll try. Then we get an intentional hark back to the Pyramids of Mars. We're taking Ruby back to the present day to see the timeline of Earth destroyed. And then there's a bit with this as well. So the dialogue where the Doctor asks Ruby which is the correct time in her time, and they arrive at June 2024, when it was Christmas in the last episode. The last episode that released on the same evening as this episode. So personally, I'm just going to choose to ignore this stuff to make continuity easier. But it's elements like this and references to the series arc and the scale of Maestro as a villain, which kind of leads me to believe this was probably supposed to be in episode 5 or 6 in the series and not episode 2. Could be wrong though. The June thing is jarring, however. To think that there's been 6 months of character development that happens off screen, again, something I'm going to choose to ignore for now. Unless it ends up being a bigger thing in the series arc that time's been meddled with and we're supposed to see that and go, that's wrong. But I just have a feeling that it's probably a little mistake. We then snap into a realm similar to the toy room with Maestro, and we see their plan to take music from every culture and bask in the music of the spheres, Aeolian tones from every planet in the universe. A surprisingly brilliant concept, actually. I mean, Maestro as a villain's great, but I was not expecting such a nuanced idea to come out here. I should expect that from Russell at this point, but it was great. I was like, oh, that's a really cool premise for a monster of this size. Gods like that who don't care about good or bad need a good purpose for doing things, and this was a great one. And that being said, Ncuti, Millie and Jinx were great in this scene. I had chills, the sort of cannon breaking stuff, the timey-wimey references, the Doctor Who theme on the piano, the TARDIS going haywire, all of that was brilliant. We then go back to the 60s, and there's a great joke in this scene with the score composed by Murray Gold not being non-diegetic and actually being diegetic in the world of the characters, which is a great touch when the episode plays with the concept of music on this scale. I loved that. I was grinning like an idiot when the Doctor said that line. Ruby's scene suspended in the air was also brilliant. The song she sings, which I'll not get into as a lot of people are starting to go mad and associate it with the Trickster. Who knows? Could be the case. But for me, the scene where we hear Carol of the Bells and that sort of echoes in with the snow falling, oh, that is stunning. I get chills in that scene every single time I watch it. It is wonderful, wonderful stuff. I'm so excited to see where all that stuff leads. The music battle sequence, despite starting with a bit of a goofy backwards shot, was really great, actually. It felt a bit like it was emulating dueling banjos from Deliverance. In fact, I kind of wish they'd just covered that entire song, or even hopped between instruments a little bit to sort of spice it up and make it a bit grander. But either way, this was a fab scene, super exciting, great use of the sort of music theme for the final battle between the Doctor and the creature, the godlike creature. The hidden chord scene was also solid, despite it not really making any sense why Maestro would give the Doctor time to work out the chord to banish them, instead of just immediately trapping the Doctor and Ruby like they ended up doing anyway. Either way, it does make for a good solid scene, and having the dramatic impact of Lennon and McCartney working together to find that hidden chord is wonderful. As a Beatles fan, I really appreciated that moment. I just kind of wish the chord in the end would have been a known, famous Beatles chord. It's similar to the chord at the end of Day in the Life, but not quite. It would have been a nice touch, but again, they probably didn't get the license for it. And finally, there is a twist at the end. I will admit, on first watch, I did cringe. It's one of those moments you'd be embarrassed if someone walked in on, but I like what they were going for. I thought on rewatch, and after hearing it many times on social media, I think it does actually hold up better. My only real criticisms are that Scylla and the Beatles sounded a bit more modern than they should. The Beatles sounded a bit like Jonas Brothers-y, when they kind of should sound a little bit more 60s and a little bit more like the Beatles, for example. But I will say the final scene is a joy to watch. As cheesy as it might seem, it's very over the top in an acknowledging and knowing kind of way. It knows how over the top it is, but it just sort of accepts it and owns it, and I kind of like that. And the final bit with the piano keys on Abbey Road was just purely stunning. I loved all of that, especially as an end to the episode. A great, great touch. Anyway, that is the episode. That is The Devil's Chord. What did I think of specifics? Let's talk about our lead characters. 15 is still selling it for me. Ncuti is brilliantly talented and has completely made this role his own here. I'm buzzing to see what Boom is going to bring and what he can bring to the show going forward in general. I'm already very impressed, and as I said in my last review, I feel like already he's going to be a lot of people's all-time favourite Doctor. Ruby was also great in this. Not as much to do as the first episode, admittedly, which is again why I think this might have been a later season episode, because I feel like we still need to get to know Ruby a little bit. But her shining moments with her playing the piano and venturing out into the modern destroyed London were really dramatic and interesting, and she did a great job with that. I would like to see Ruby given a little bit more to do over the next few episodes, so fingers crossed. Maestro, played by Jinx Monsoon, just incredible. I understand it might be a little bit over the top for some people, but having this kind of performance for a character that is sort of the evil god of music works perfectly for the vibe of Doctor Who. It's like watching a Broadway performance, but right in front of you. It's sort of jarring and slightly uncomfortable, but phenomenal at the same time, and I think that's all intentional. So much energy went into it, and it felt like it was emulating so many of my favourites. A little bit of Rocky Horror Picture Show, a little bit of It, Tim Curry basically, but a lot of sort of emulations and stuff here and there. The little David Bowie reference in the performance. There's just so much in that I was just like, this is great. And I genuinely feel like Maestro could be a returning villain, and I would be really, really, really happy with that. Overall, this episode has so much going for it. I think, though, only time will tell, like Wild Blue Yonder, if it will go down as an all-time favourite of mine. But as it stands, I loved it. I love the connections to the Toymaker, I love the setup for the rest of the series. There's so much here that I really love, and it feels so unique and creatively different for Doctor Who. I found little things like the dates and the final music scene to feel a little bit out of place and a little bit clumsily done, but overall, I'm honestly a massive fan of this episode. So I'm gonna say, and it might change later, but currently, I'm gonna go 9 out of 10. What did you think though? Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and I'd love to have a read. Like, comment and subscribe, and stay tuned for more reviews in the very near future. As well as a weekly Doctor Who news show on Tuesdays called The Who Bulletin, live here on YouTube. I also have a podcast, which is available over on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, here on YouTube, and a bunch of other places. It's called Nostalgia Bait. We talk about movies, TVs, games, and whatever else. We recently did a couple of Doctor Who episodes, and our most recent episode was actually a review of the Fallout series. So if you're interested in that, check it out in the description below, or on the card on screen now. Somewhere up there. Maybe. Who knows. Thank you anyway all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all very soon. Bye bye.